Let's bring in Governor Christie right now. Governor, you're not a villain. Is Julian Assange? Where do you stand?
Villain.
No question, right?
Villain, no question about it. And I do think the case is going to be a little bit easier to prove than Andy said. I think this guy was deeply involved. I think we already see evidence points of that, and I think that what was uncovered in the Mueller investigation will be very, very problematic for Mr. Assange.
Well, I think, by the way, Governor Christie, his book, Let Me Finish, is excellent. You got to go grab it, especially if you want to know the inner workings of the Trump campaign and where we're at right now with it. A lot of this stuff was predicted. So talking about Assange in particular, we're not even bringing up 2016 so far that I can tell in the indictment. We're talking about what he might have done with then Bradley Manning to help him break these codes, break into these documents in the Pentagon when he was serving. If they have that email trail, fine. Others are calling him, like Tulsi Gabbard, a journalist.
Yeah, I think, listen, as you and I both know, that term has become more and more loosely defined by the left as it serves their purposes. But in the end, I think Assange is a criminal, and I think that's what's going to be proven when he's brought to an American courtroom.
Do you know how hard it's going to be yet to get him out?
Don't know yet how difficult it's going to be, but I would say this, the fact that Great Britain has him in custody is a lot better news for us than many other countries having him across the world.
So one of the big stories that doesn't get enough play but seems to be pretty on the forefront of the president's mind and administration is 5G. Now, we know about Huawei and this Chinese company that we're threatening our allies not to get on board with, like Italy and Poland, who seem to be ignoring us. But for the most part, we don't have a 5G option. And there's a new company pushed forward by Newt Gingrich and Karl Rove that might be that option. You don't think so. It's called Rivada. Why?
Well, I don't think so, because what Rivada is asking the government to do is to give them spectrum to build a 5G network, for them to be the only company that gets the chance to do it, and for them to be given the spectrum for free, where when we built 3G and 4G, the spectrum, the government was paid for the spectrum by the private sector. And by the way, we built the 4G network in the private sector much faster than any place else in the world, and right now on 5G with the private sector competing to get 5G all over this country. Let's compare us to China, since you brought up China. Right now, 5G is deployed in 20 different sites in the United States by the private sector interests. In China, one site. We have the experience in this, Brian, meaning we as a country. The private enterprise system works, and if you leave something to the bureaucracy of the government and a government-run process here, this is not going to work.
So do you think the president understands that? Well, Brad Parscale, I guess, tweeted out something in support of this, and that caught your attention. Brad is running the re-election campaign.
And listen, I think there are a lot of voices inside the White House who are in favor of the private enterprise system. And so folks in the White House who are advising the president, like Larry Kudlow and others, who feel strongly about giving the private sector the continued opportunity to compete. I mean, let's look at it this way. No matter who you're talking about in the private sector, Verizon, AT&T, Sprint, having them all compete with each other will help 5G get built faster with American technology and make it more attractive to our allies around the world than going with Chinese technology, which will, let's face it, Brian, the Chinese have written into their laws that their citizens are required to cooperate with the Chinese government in obtaining intelligence from other countries. Is this really the way we want to go? I think we want to beat that back. We beat it back on 4G with a private sector solution, and it just seems to me that most Americans believe in the private sector, not in the government bureaucracy. And I'm a little surprised, that Newt's in favor of a government bureaucracy solution as opposed to a private sector one.
But you do agree it's an all hands on deck kind of to get 5G and get it out there, and we can't sit back as a country and wait for it to be invented, correct?
Absolutely not, Brian. It is an all-hands-on-deck situation, which is why you want every one of these great companies and all the brilliant engineers that they have on their staffs working on this, not just one company who, by the way, from what I understand, has never deployed a network like this in its history. So we're going to have the government work with a company that's never built a network like this in its history, and we think it's going to go well?
Gotcha.
Or should we hand it over to competition where Sprint, Verizon, AT&T will all be competing with each other to get the largest 5G network as quickly as possible so they can attract more customers? Not only customers here in the United States, but around the world. That's what we should be shooting for, Brian. That's what this country's always been all about. And that's why I'm speaking out on it, because it seems contrary to what we've always been for as Republicans and even more broadly as Americans.
And if I can get you out of that network contract, you could come on television this morning in front of a live audience and talked about it on TV. Not that radio's not great.
The radio is great, but you're right. One of your competitors got me.
How dare you? So, Governor, we can't talk about the Mets the whole time. I don't care how hard you push, but it would have come. What a great night last night. They won 6-3.
But what a great night, and what a great home run by Pete Alonso.
Yeah, he's a rookie, 24-year-old with a great attitude and a lot of pop. But I digress. I have not talked to you since the bottom line, not a summary, bottom line conclusion came out, and the Mueller report's about to come out. But when Barr went up to Capitol Hill and was supposed to talk dollars and cents, he was asked about Mueller, and this is the line that's getting a lot of play.
You're not suggesting, though, that spying occurred.
I don't, I guess you could, I think spying did occur. Yes, I think spying did occur.
And with that, the MSNBC and CNN and your network melted down. Should they have?
No, they shouldn't have. I think they had to listen to the entirety of the Attorney General's testimony, where he talked about electronic surveillance, which we know occurred with Carter Page. We know there were FISA warrants that wiretapped Carter Page. We know there was counterintelligence work being done with Papadopoulos. And so we know this stuff occurred. I don't think that what he said was all that shocking. I think what the Attorney General is trying to do is what's responsible, which is to say, okay, we now know there was no collusion with the Russian government by the Trump campaign. Now I'd like to find out, did we follow all the rules and the law regarding opening a counterintelligence investigation to begin with, because we opened it against the campaign of one of the major nominees for the presidential election in 2016. And I think that's what the American people should want, is to make sure that all those rules were followed. We do not need anyone acting rogue. And when you look at some of the information that's been out there from Jim Comey, from Andy McCabe, from Peter Strzok, from Lisa Page, I think that what the Attorney General said, Brian, was responsible. He said, I don't know, I have concerns, and I want those concerns answered.
Right.
That's a responsible Attorney General.
So that question was posed to James Comey, and controversy follows. Cut 13.
With respect to Barr's comments, I really don't know what he's talking about when he talks about spying on the campaign. It's concerning because the FBI and the Department of Justice conduct court-ordered electronic surveillance. I have never thought of that as spying.
Can you help me with this?
No, I can't. Jim has completely taken leave of his senses, and to try to defend the indefensible, which goes all the way back to his conduct and what he said about Hillary Clinton in the summer of 2016, the letter he wrote in the fall of 2016. Jim is still trying to defend the indefensible. How is electronic surveillance not spying? I mean, you're in a covert way gathering information from someone who doesn't know you're doing it. Sounds like spying to me. Now, it may be legal, Brian,
right,
and it may have been justified. And the Attorney General may look at this and say, you know what, under all the circumstances, I think opening the counterintelligence investigation was legally justified. What the Democrats are doing, because they're so frantic about this, because they're frantic about the idea that the Obama administration could wind up being accused in the end of this of having spied illegally on the Trump campaign, rather than Trump having illegally colluded with the Russian government, that they're trying to say that Barr's already reached his conclusion. He hasn't. He hasn't said that there was illegal spying going on.
Yep.
He said there was surveillance going on. And by the way, we all know that already to be true, and Jim Comey just confirmed it in those comments.
You know you're going to be the only sane one on your George Stephanopoulos panel on Sunday. You know that, right?
I'm prepared. Don't you worry.
All right.
I'm ready to go. As you can tell, I'm warming up on the Brian Kilmeade Show,
Right.
and I will come in for the kill on Sunday.
You always do. But first you have that look of amazement before you talk. I always love that. And then they try to get a word in, and they can't. So I want you to weigh in on this as a New Yorker, a New Jersey governor who thought his wife was in the towers on 9/11. Cut
Yes.
33.
CARE was founded after 9/11 because they recognized that some people did something and that all of us were starting to lose access to our civil liberties.
Really? She's telling CARE that some people did something on 9/11. Is that how you would characterize it?
No. As somebody who had my wife 2 blocks away from the World Trade Center that day, my brother on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, and a number of people in our local parish here who passed away, a murder occurred. Multiple murders occurred. 2,900 murders occurred on that day by radical Islamic terrorists. And that's the way it should always be spoken about, to honor those victims. And this woman is completely, let's put aside her religion for the moment. As a public servant, she's off her rocker to be describing it that way. And it's a disgrace. It's a disgrace to anyone in her congressional district who voted for her.
Well, that doesn't resonate with everyone. Listen to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, cut 34.
The level to which Republican and conservative groups, whether they are official party apparatuses, sending out emails, calling me and others domestic terrorists, or whether it's Rupert Murdoch in the New York Post printing on the front page to circulate all around New York City an image that is incredibly upsetting and triggering for New Yorkers that were actually there for such a transparently politically motivated attack on Ilhan.
Really? Is it a politically motivated attack on Ilhan?
No, what it is reporting exactly what she said. And, this is the problem with people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. They like to talk a lot, but they don't want to be held responsible for anything they say. And the fact is that to diminish the attacks on 9/11, the greatest attack ever perpetrated on this country, on our soil from a terrorist organization, is to demean the lives that were lost that day, both among those who were in those buildings and on those airplanes, and those who lost their lives trying to save them. And you know what? What she should do is apologize and be done with it, because there's no justifying it. And listen, part of it too, Brian, is I'm so tired of hearing AOC, as she's called, being given airtime in this country. She's a joke. She got elected because a member of Congress went to sleep and never went back to his district, and was too busy running for speaker rather than running to keep his congressional seat. I think she will be seen ultimately as a asterisk in history, because I can't imagine she's going to stay all that long.
He is Governor Christie. 5G has got his attention. The Rivada network he doesn't believe should fly. Karl Rove and Newt Gingrich, 2 friends of the show. He just doesn't like the way the government is carving up spectrum for them. And I appreciate you weighing in with us, Governor. I'll talk to you soon.
Brian, always great to talk to you. And let's end the show, as you and I always should, with 3 very important words. Let's go, Mets.
Let's go, Mets. Brian Kilmeade Show. We are biased.